I got disinvited from my mom's birthday because apparently I didn't match the image they wanted next to my sister's boyfriend. Funny enough, he actually worked for me. When I told my dad I still planned on coming home, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Then stop calling me your dad." A few weeks later, right on my mom's birthday, their house lost power, water, and internet all at once. What happened next still sits with me, and maybe you'll see a bit of yourself in it. Hey, I'm Jake. I'm 31 and live in a small town not too far from Tacoma, about a 30-minute drive. My mornings are pretty routine. I make coffee, check the weather, and take a short drive to work. I helped start a small tech company focused on clean energy. Most folks, including my own family, don't really get what I do. They still think I spend my days with a wrench, fixing things in a garage. I never bothered correcting them. It never felt worth explaining. When people ask about my family, my parents or my sister Emily, I usually just offer a small smile and say, "We haven't talked in a while," and leave it at that. I'm not hiding anything. I just don't see the point in retelling something that feels done. It's been over 2 years since I last reached out to them. No calls, no texts, no holidays or birthdays, nothing. Just this long, empty silence, like the line got cut and no one cared enough to fix it. There was a time I believed family meant everything. But that changed 2 years ago, right around my mom's birthday. Back then, a few weeks before the big day, I'd cleared my calendar and booked a few days off. I planned to head home early, lend a hand like I always did, help set things up. Just the usual. I called my mom to give her a heads up, but my dad picked up instead, right after a couple of rings. I told him, kind of casually, "I'll be home a couple days early. Let me know if you need anything." At first, he was vague, then hesitated. When he finally spoke, his voice had this weight to it, like he was holding something back. "Jake, maybe don't come home this year," he said. I figured he was worried about my work schedule or something. "It's all good, Dad," I told him, holding my coffee. "I've got time." There was a longer pause this time. Then he came back, more direct, but cold. "Emily's bringing her boyfriend this year. He's a manager, smart, sharp, knows how to carry himself. Your job, well, it's not exactly something we bring up in conversation. So, it's probably better if you just skip it." I could feel the heat rush up my neck. My heart started pounding, and I gripped my coffee cup tighter without even realizing it. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice already rising. "Are you serious right now?" He didn't deny it, didn't soften anything. He just replied, blunt as ever, "You'd embarrass the whole family. If you still plan on coming, don't call me your father." Then he hung up. I slowly set the phone down, my hand shaking and damp with sweat. The apartment around me was dead quiet. No TV, no footsteps, just stillness. I stood there frozen, staring at nothing, like I'd just been yanked out of my own life. His words kept looping in my head, over and over, like a broken record. "You'd embarrass the whole family. If you still plan on coming back, don't call me your father." For a second, I thought maybe I'd heard it wrong. But no, his voice had been ice cold and firm. There was no doubt, no accident, no second chance in his tone. My jaw clenched and my throat felt like it was closing up. Then, like a wave crashing in, memories started hitting me. Through the years, I'd been quietly paying all their bills, electricity, water, internet, never asking for anything in return. Nobody ever brought it up. And now, I was the embarrassment? I picked up my phone again, hands still a bit shaky, even though my thoughts had started to settle. I opened up my banking app and scrolled through the transaction history, just wanting to see how much I'd actually spent on my family over the past years. I was just looking for some hard numbers, how much I'd been paying every month for their electricity, water, and internet. Each of those bills had been paid like clockwork, deducted from my account automatically, without fail. For all this time, it came out to about $450 a month, every single month. I slowly scrolled to the bottom of the list. The total stared back at me, $10,950. I just looked at that number for a bit, not because I was surprised, but because something inside me just settled. It wasn't sadness or even anger, just this heavy emptiness. Almost 11 grand, and somehow, I'm the one they call a disappointment. Looking at that long list of payments, a quiet thought popped into my head. No one in my family had ever asked this in 31 years, but I did now. Had Emily ever done anything close to this for them? It wasn't about jealousy, and I wasn't trying to score points. I just wondered, if I'm the embarrassment, then who exactly are they comparing me to? I'd covered nearly $11,000 in bills for them, without saying a word, without asking for anything back. And Emily? Did she ever sacrifice anything, ever go out of her way, or even ask if they needed help? Or did she just show up smiling, looking great in some expensive dress, with a polished boyfriend by her side? I wasn't keeping a tally. I asked because, for the first time, I realized that fairness never existed in that house. I'd gotten used to being in the background. Ever since I was a kid, I was the one half hidden in family pictures, off to the side of the frame, not quite looking at the camera. No one told me to step aside, but somehow, I always did. Emily was the star at every family moment, from birthdays and graduations to her heartbreaks. There was always a reason to circle around her, to console her, to celebrate her. I can't remember the last time anyone asked me if I was doing okay. She's 2 years older than me, but it was never about age. She was always the future, the golden child, the one our parents bragged about to the relatives. And me? If they mentioned me at all, it was just a passing line. Jake? Oh, he's fine. I think he's in tech or something. For a long time, I believed that if I just kept working hard, stayed out of trouble, and quietly held things together, they'd eventually see me. But they didn't. Turns out, when you've been invisible your whole life, no one notices when you're gone. I started paying their utility bills, electricity, water, internet, a few years ago. It began with a call from my mom. She sounded stressed, saying how the bills had jumped unexpectedly that month, and how their retirement income wasn't cutting it anymore. Then she hesitated and gently asked if I could maybe help out a little. I said yes. Back then, I figured it would just be for a few months, just enough to help them through a tough patch. But the months rolled on, and nothing changed. No one ever said to stop. There was no plan B. Once in a while, I'd ask, "Is Emily helping out at all, Mom?" She'd always dodge the question. Sometimes she'd say, "Just help us this month. Your sister will chip in next time." Other times it was, "Emily's covering some medical expenses for your dad. That's not easy either." I heard those same lines so often, I could probably repeat them in my sleep. And every time, I just nodded and let it slide, knowing deep down they weren't true. So I kept sending the money. Nearly $450 every month, on time and without a fuss. Nobody ever brought it up. It wasn't that I didn't care. I did. I just thought helping them was the right thing to do. I really believed that if I kept being responsible and stayed quiet, maybe one day they'd notice. But now, after all that, they look me dead in the face and say I'm the shame of the family. Eventually, everything around me went quiet, and I found myself frozen on the couch, phone still in my hand. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad either. There was just one clear feeling left in me, something like, that's enough. So I opened up my banking app again and scrolled down to the section where I had set up those monthly payments for their power, water, and internet bills. One by one, I tapped into each bill and canceled them without a second thought. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it quietly because it was the only way I could hold on to what little dignity I still had. That tiny piece of self-worth, they hadn't managed to take that from me yet. About a week later, my mom reached out with her usual calm, almost sweet tone. She didn't mention a word about what had happened. There was no apology, no checking in. Just a simple message, "Got a notice about the internet bill. Can you take care of it?" I looked at that message, stared at the screen for a while, then put my phone down without replying. Not because I was trying to make a statement, but because, really? The first thing she says is a request? No, how are you? Not even a "can we talk?" Just pay the bill. So, I stayed quiet. And honestly, that silence said everything I needed it to. 2 weeks passed, and then my dad called. The phone rang a few times before it stopped. I didn't answer. A few minutes later, he left a voicemail. His tone was sharp, impatient, same as always. The power company called. "This month's bill hasn't been paid. What's going on?" No concern. No acknowledgement of the last time we spoke, when he told me not to come home if I still wanted to call him my father. I listened to his message, turned off the screen, and set the phone down on the table, face down. And just like that, I stayed silent right up until my mom's birthday. That day came about 3 weeks after Dad told me not to come. The party went ahead like nothing happened. Her favorite roasted chicken, cake from that same bakery she loves, and some close relatives sitting around the table, smiling. Everything went perfectly, except I wasn't there. That afternoon I was sitting in my living room, sipping a cup of coffee that had gone cold a while ago, when my phone buzzed. It was my mom calling. I stared at her name for a moment, then set the phone down without answering. No hesitation. A few minutes later, my dad tried calling. Then Emily. 3 calls in 15 minutes. I didn't pick up. I wasn't curious. I didn't even feel tempted. I just leaned back in my chair, eyes resting on the fogged-up window. Outside, the sky was a dull gray, not rainy, just that kind of cold that seeps in slowly and settles. The kind that tells you winter's just around the corner. About 10 minutes later, the text started coming in. First, my mom. Jake, the power's out. The whole house is dark. Please pay the bill. I read it in silence. No anger. No shock. Just this quiet, hollow feeling spreading through me. That kind of emptiness that hits after years of carrying the weight of a family alone. Then came my dad. No water. We can't cook. Handle it now. Right after that, Emily chimed in. Internet's down. Guests are here. Fix this. It's urgent. I glanced at the clock for 50 p.m. I remembered clearly. I'd canceled every automatic payment exactly 3 weeks ago, right after Dad told me not to call him Dad if I dared show up. And now, during the birthday party they told me to stay away from, everything started falling apart. No electricity. No water. No internet. All of it vanished just when they needed it most. I didn't reply. Didn't call back. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I just sat there, slowly turning the cold coffee cup in my hands, staring through the window like I was looking beyond what was in front of me. That's when it really hit me. They weren't calling because they missed me. They were calling because they had no one else to lean on. Around 6:30 p.m., my phone started buzzing again. This time, it didn't stop. But now it wasn't my parents or Emily. It was the extended family. The ones who only show up during holidays but somehow think they get to judge everything. The messages poured in. A few called me disrespectful. One of them even said, "You embarrassed your mom in front of everyone." Another, a little more subtle but just as cruel, wrote, "Your sister was right. People like you shouldn't ruin a happy occasion." I went through every message without replying, not because silence meant I agreed with them, but because I was just done trying to explain myself to people who always chose the louder crowd over what was right. I was about to set my phone down when the screen lit up again. It was Aunt Karen. She was the only one in the family who still believed in me. She was calling through this old video app that only she and I still used, probably because we were the only ones who ever cared to look each other in the eye when it really mattered. I hesitated for a moment, then answered on the second ring. The first thing I saw was her face, softly lit by that familiar yellow glow coming from her kitchen. I knew that room like my own reflection, every cracked tile, every creaky cabinet. But something felt different this time. In the background, I could hear the clatter of silverware, forced laughter, and light chatter that didn't quite feel genuine. She looked at me through the screen with a warm but worried expression. "You're not paying for it, are you, Jake?" she asked gently, like she was trying to figure out what was really going on beneath the surface. I met her gaze, and when I finally spoke, my voice came out slow, like I was dragging up something I'd buried for years. "You know, Auntie, it was Dad. He told me not to come," I said, swallowing hard. "He said if I still showed up, I shouldn't call him my father anymore." She fell quiet. Her expression shifted, like she was suddenly taking in the room behind her with new eyes. And right then, chaos broke loose on the other side of the call. I heard my mom's voice rising above the noise. "Tell him I'm ashamed of him. Of all days, today, how could he do this?" My dad cut in, sharp and irritated. "It's not even that big a deal. It's just some bills. What kind of man gets this petty over money?" Then someone else, probably my uncle, added, "Poor Emily, having to deal with a brother like that." Footsteps moved closer to the camera, and suddenly Emily was standing behind Aunt Karen, arms crossed, her mouth tight with annoyance. He actually picked up the call? Mom's been crying all day. Does he even care? No shame. Seriously. I didn't say a word. I just sat and watched, like staying silent was the only way to protect myself now. I was about to end the call when a new face popped in from the side of the screen. A young guy with neatly combed hair and a dark suit looked at me, confused at first, then gave a hesitant smile. "Hey, boss," he said, his voice scratchy, unsure if words even belonged in that moment. I froze. My eyes stayed locked on the screen, and without meaning to, I pulled the phone a little closer. I hadn't expected this, not here, not on the night they'd all decided I was too much of an embarrassment to invite. I stared at him a little longer. His voice, the way he spoke, it clicked. Of course. He was one of the new hires from our southern branch. We traded a few emails. He'd sent me a couple reports. I had no clue he was Emily's boyfriend, the one they'd all been so eager to impress. The room behind Aunt Karen seemed to hold its breath. I saw her glance over her shoulder, and then the whole kitchen burst into nervous chaos. Someone whispered, "Wait." What did he just call Jake? Another voice followed, stunned. Boss? Does that mean Jake's his boss? The murmurs picked up like a rising wave, overlapping, unsure, shocked. And me? I didn't move, didn't explain. I just kept watching, waiting to see how it all played out. Then the guy stood up straighter, looked around at the room, and said clearly, in case anyone didn't know, I work at Northwest Green Tech. Mr. Jake is one of the company's co-founders. His voice was sharp, clear, and loud enough to cut through all the clinking and murmuring. The room fell into a strange kind of silence, not awkward, just stunned. I still didn't say anything. I pressed my lips together and gave a small nod. He looked back at the screen, eyes wide, and I replied, calm and even, like I'd been saving those words just for him. Hope your big introduction goes well. Then I ended the call. That night, I slept straight through, no tossing, no waking up in the dark with those old questions circling my head. For the first time in a long while, I felt light. Not because I felt victorious, but because they finally saw me for who I really was. The next morning, before the sun had even fully crept through the thin curtains, I reached for my phone and checked my emails like I always do. A few calendar reminders, a couple finance notes. Then I spotted a name I didn't recognize right away, Blake Turner. I tapped it open, and the first line hit me quick. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were Emily's brother. I've always respected you at work. I raised an eyebrow and leaned back against my pillow as I kept reading. Blake said he'd been genuinely surprised to learn I was related to Emily. And then, without dressing it up, he added, I didn't expect her to be like that. I'm ending the relationship. He thanked me for not putting him on the spot in front of everyone. I let the phone rest on my chest for a bit, eyes closed. Eventually, I opened it back up and started typing. Slowly, clearly, no fluff. Blake, this is your decision. I don't expect anyone to do something just to stay in my favor. But think it through before you go making final calls. And for the record, I never bring family stuff into the workplace. Then I hit send. No second guessing, no emotional weight hanging over me. That was enough for me. Sometimes when a thing's clear, you don't need to keep turning it over in your hands. Later that morning, around 11, I was just wrapping up a meeting and jotting down some notes when my phone buzzed. Emily's name lit up the screen. I looked at it for a few seconds and hit decline, not to make a scene, not because I was bitter, just because I was done. I'd heard enough apologies that only ever came after the damage was already done. A few minutes later, a text rolled in. I'm sorry. I didn't think Blake would react like that. I didn't know you were his boss. If you talk to him, I know he'll listen. Please, ask him to come back to me. After reading it, I walked over to the hallway window and leaned against the frame. I read the message again. Then again, and when I finally typed my reply, it was short, but it said exactly what needed to be said. Blake didn't leave because of me. He left because of how you treat people, how you act like anyone who doesn't fit your mold is beneath you, and how you always think saying things gently makes it okay. I sent it off, put the phone in my pocket, and went back to my desk. Not even a full minute passed before another message came through. I know I messed up. I mean it this time. I'll change. Please. Just believe me this once. I didn't answer. I read it, sat with it for a little while, and felt nothing. Not because I didn't care anymore, but because something in me finally understood. Sometimes the problem isn't the apology. It's when that apology shows up too late to matter. I quietly deleted the message. No trace left. Then I got back to my life. A week later, on a Friday afternoon, I was heading back inside from the garage when I froze right there on the porch. My parents were standing at the front door, each of them holding a small suitcase. They looked tired, worn out from traveling. I didn't ask why they came. If they'd made the trip all the way out here, it wasn't just a casual stop. So I opened the door and let them in. No tension, no fake kindness. Just a clear choice. I didn't want to have this talk out there, with the wind starting to pick up. We sat in the living room. The tea on the table was still steaming. My dad spoke first. His voice was quieter than usual. He apologized. Then my mom followed, saying they'd had time to think. Maybe they'd pushed too far, and things should have never gotten to where they did. I didn't jump in. I didn't argue. I just listened, trying to figure out whether their words were an ending or the start of something new. And just like I figured, Dad's tone shifted a bit. We're family, Jake. Family's supposed to help each other. We raised you, paid for your schooling. You wouldn't have what you do now without us, right? I looked at him. My face didn't change, but I sat up a little straighter in my seat. Then my mom chimed in, her voice soft like she was making a perfectly reasonable suggestion. She said maybe I could start sending them about $1,000 a month, just a little support, she called it. Said it wasn't a lot for someone in my position. I looked at them, these same people who once didn't want me at a family gathering because they thought I'd embarrass them. And now here they were, sitting in my house, putting a price tag on their apology. $1,000 a month, just because I was their son. In their minds, my success meant I owed them something. I let out a quiet chuckle, not sarcastic, not loud. Just the kind that slips out when someone says something that's so upside down, you don't even know where to start. I looked at both of them straight on. Their eyes were locked on mine, like they expected me to nod and go along with it. But I wasn't mad. I'd moved past that a long time ago. I leaned back a little in my chair and asked calmly, "What about Emily? How much is she going to help out each month?" Everything kind of froze after that. The air felt heavier. My dad gave my mom a quick glance. She spoke slowly, voice dipping like she was trying to cushion the blow. She said Emily's job situation was still unstable, and the breakup with Blake had been rough on her. I nodded, not shocked at all. Same old story, just dressed up in softer words. They weren't explanations, they were just excuses in disguise. I met their gaze and told them straight. If she's willing to pitch in $1,000 a month, then I'll do the same. No more, no less. Neither of them said a word, just stared at me like they were trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I kept going, voice low but steady. Or, if you expect me to carry all of it, I'll need something in writing. A legal document that states once you're both gone, the house becomes mine entirely. Then I just sat there. No pressure, no push. I'd said my piece and was waiting to see how they'd respond now that, for the first time, I was setting the terms. The silence after that was thick. Suddenly, my dad shot up from his seat. He slammed his hand against the table, knocking over a teacup. The tea spilled down the side and onto the floor. He started yelling, chest rising and falling like he was trying to hold back a fire. "You're putting conditions on your own parents? We raised you for over 20 years, gave you everything, and now you're treating us like some kind of business deal? What kind of life are you even living?" He was shouting loud enough that I wouldn't have been surprised if the neighbors heard every word. Still, I didn't move. I didn't react. I stayed where I was, hands resting on the chair's arms, just looking at him. Not cold, but definitely not soft anymore. Once he was done, I stood up slowly. My voice was calm, low, but clear enough to cut through all the noise he'd stirred up. "I think it's time for you both to leave." I wasn't threatening them. I wasn't yelling back. I just reached that point where respect had run its course, and this was what was left. They didn't argue. No more words. Just the sound of their bags dragging across the floor and the soft click of the door behind them, quieter than everything they'd just left sitting inside me. It's been 2 years since that day, since I saw them standing in my living room. I didn't block their numbers, didn't change my email, didn't officially cut ties. I just stopped reaching out. I waited. I wanted to see if they'd still think of me as part of the family once I stopped carrying the weight out of guilt or duty. But in all this time, no one's asked how I've been. No texts, no calls for birthdays, no checking in when I was sick. Not even a simple, "How are you?" For a while, I held on to the hope that maybe, someday, they'd change. But I've learned that not everyone does, especially those who've never admitted they were wrong in the first place. I still live in the same house. Still go to work. Still do my day-to-day. The only difference now is, I don't let myself get used anymore. I don't let anyone turn me into an emotional ATM, always giving and always getting hurt just because of some unspoken family rule. And if there's one solid truth I've walked away with, it's this. Family doesn't get to demand kindness and then call it love. Real family? They value you for you, not for what you can hand over, not as a bank, and not as their last resort when everything else falls apart, not as the fallback plan when everyone else bails. And before I wrap this up, I've got a question for you. Was I wrong for choosing not to go back? For saying no when my parents asked for $1,000 a month, even though they're older now and once raised me? There was a time when I really believed family could get through anything. But after spending years feeling like an outsider in the house I grew up in, I finally decided to break the pattern. Was I too harsh? Maybe I just finally figured out how to value myself and did it at the right time. Let me know what you think in the comments, whether you're with me or not. I really want to hear your thoughts. And if this story hit close to home for you, feel free to subscribe. There are so many stories out there that deserve to be heard. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and click that button, and don't forget to hit the bell so you don't miss more unbelievable true stories.